It's showtime.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
You know, the right to bear arms is because that's the last form of defense against tyranny.
Washington is fundamentally corrupt. There are more words in the IRS code than there are in the Bible.
Made in America, heard round the world. You're listening to Blunt Force Truth. I'm Chuck Woolery, along with my co-host Mark Young. Income inequality. What in the world is that? And on top of that, is there income equality anywhere on this planet that you know of?
Venezuela, they have income equality.
Income equality in Venezuela or any place else?
Well, no, everybody's broke. Everybody's starving except
not everybody, because the elites aren't broke.
Exactly.
And my point is this, is that Democrats throw this stuff around like it's supposed to lead you into some kind of nirvana where everybody makes the same amount of money. So if you're a 3-time PhD and you've spent copious amounts of money on your education and you come out and then you make as much as a janitor does. And by the way, I got pushback on Twitter on this because I put this out. And some woman came back. She said, well, I'm a professor at such and such teaching so-and-so, and the janitor here makes more than I do.
Really?
I don't believe it, but, that's what she said.
The janitor may be more useful.
Well, he probably is more useful, and he doesn't have tenure. So anyway, this is just a bogus bull crap idea thrown out by the Democrats that everybody's going to be paid equally for things, and it's never going to happen, ever. And, of course, it's a pushback on capitalism where individuality can, you can do better. Why does everybody run to a capitalist nation? Because the opportunity to make more money and to be successful and to try new things that no one's ever tried. You don't want government hovering over you all the time, telling you that this is what you're going to make. And by the way, these people who are pushing this, they keep calling for higher income and increasing their income in Congress and all that kind of stuff. Well, give me a break. Why is that? My point is it's ridiculous, and people shouldn't fall for it unless they understood what it amounts to. And it amounts to nothing. It means nothing. It is completely unreality in its most naked form. And it's just sloganeering is all it is, and pandering.
Well, first off, we don't have an income inequality problem in America, Chuck. We have a motivation inequality problem in America.
Well, this is the whole thing. When Pelosi came out, she said, well, welfare is really good. It contributes to the tax rolls. You have no idea. And you're going, what? And Tom Perez comes out and says, sure, we ought to insure all the illegals, and they pay taxes. I mean, we need more illegals in this country that pay taxes. These people are totally insane.
Well, think about, so let me give you this idea here. First off, you listen to Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders hates wealth.
Well, he has plenty of wealth. Why does he hate it?
Because he hates anybody who has, but he hates wealth that's more than his.
You know what, Mark? We celebrated the 4th of July. And I tell you, you know what the left celebrates? Karl Marx's birthday. And I have an example of this. Mayor Pete's father in South Bend, Indiana, as a group, as a family, they celebrated Karl Marx's birthday every year. This is one of your Democrat hopefuls.
That's amazing.
Well, I mean, it's just, it's crazy. Most people have no idea who Karl Marx is, by the way, which is irritating too.
Now, follow with me here. Bernie Sanders is constantly attacking the Waltons because they inherited their wealth.
Walmart.
Now, the left says that inherited wealth is evil and it is bad because when you inherit wealth, you have no motivation and you didn't do anything to earn it. It strips you of your motivation. Right?
Now,
what does welfare do?
Well, you have no motivation, period. Not strip you of it. You just have none.
But my question is, why is getting money from your family evil, but getting money from the government is good?
Yeah, I know. It's nuts.
That makes no sense.
Of course it doesn't, but the left makes no sense.
Because getting money from your family didn't cost the taxpayers anything.
No. Of course, getting money from the government, it's redistribution of wealth, which the Democrats are all for some unknown. They're always, pitting rich against poor, and dividing the country and claiming that Trump divides us when they've been dividing us forever. And they always, whatever they're doing, they accuse you of doing.
If we look back on socialism, this is what a lot of people don't realize. Socialism, the first thing I want to do is I want to make people feel a little better that even though a lot of people, especially younger people, think they would vote for a socialist,
right?
Socialism is not likely to take hold in this country anytime soon.
Probably not, but eventually, you know, with the kind of education these kids are getting and the Marxist, you know, doctrine. I mean, when you go back, I'll tell you something, Mark, it's very interesting. If you look at what the Democrats are proposing, free health care, free living, free money, free this, free that. If you look back at Stalin's 1937, I'm talking about Joseph Stalin of the Communist Party in Russia. When he started the Communist Party, they started it wasn't a manifesto, it was really their constitution. And if you go down the list of page 36 or 42, whatever it is every single thing that the Democrats are proposing. Right. It is totally Marxist.
Also, what came with Stalin was the Great Purge.
Yeah, he killed everybody.
Yes, he killed more people than Hitler.
Well, Mao killed more people than both of them combined.
Yeah, well, there's like a competition.
Yeah.
When we look at communism in America goes all the way back into the 1800s.
Right. Been here for a long time. People don't realize that, but it's been here for a long time.
And it was brought here by Germans.
Which makes sense because Hegel in the late 1800s, of course he died, but in the 1800s he came up with this whole socialist plan that Karl Marx, what's the other guy's name?
Ginatelli
in Italy picked up for fascism.
Marx, Engels, Lenin.
They all picked it up and kind of made it their own in their own particular way. You know, the difference between communism, Marxism, and Nazism, Marxism, they're both socialist. They're very close to each other in ideology. But the fascists, which is what they keep saying we are because we're for our country, the fascists were nationalists. They were for their country. The communists were for worldwide. They were Catholic in their approach. It was a worldwide, by the way, the word Catholic means worldwide. So, yeah, they were for a worldwide takeover, and that was the only difference between the two. Otherwise, they were all the same.
See, what a lot of people don't understand is when you go back to the late 1800s and the early 1900s, so I'm going to go just a little bit pre-Woodrow Wilson, we had very powerful socialist parties here in America.
Right.
We had Eugene Debs, who ran for president as a socialist. There were 4 or 5 members of Congress who won as socialists. There were 36 mayors who won as socialists. So socialism was actually kind of a big thing. So this is not new.
No. Nothing's very new under the sun, really. It just
now, what happened
packages itself like a good advertiser.
What happened was the Socialist Party started getting some bad press. So they renamed themselves. They renamed themselves the AFL, which is still around today, the American Federation of Labor. They became the unions.
But it's interesting because when you say that, it makes perfect sense because socialism always revolved around unions in other countries, in foreign countries like Germany, communists, they had their unions.
Right, and guilds. They would, sometimes they were guilds, but yes. So the whole idea, when you look at socialism, and you brought up a good point, and that is that most people don't know what socialism is.
They don't. I mean, especially young people really don't have a clue what socialism really is.
When we're arguing about socialism here in the United States, and many on the right get it wrong too, Chuck, because a lot of people will claim that healthcare for all is socialism, that a guaranteed minimum wage is socialism. Technically, those are not socialist values. They do fall into socialist values, but they're not the technical description of socialism.
Mm-hmm.
The real definition of socialism is when you put the means of production into the hands of the people or into the hands of the government.
Not to the hands of the people. That's capitalism. It's into the hands of the government. In other words,
only in the hands of the people when it's a collective, but really in the hands of the government.
It's the hands of the government. That's right. And if you want government-run healthcare, if you want government-run anything, then great. You're a statist socialist.
So when you start to worry about socialism, it's when you hear people like Maxine Waters say, we're going to take over the banks.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's socialism. We're going to take over the oil companies. Right. You hear some of them say we're going to take over Google, take over Facebook. Mm-hmm. Okay, when you hear that stuff, that's socialism. And when Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez and all these other dirtbags who claim, yeah, they are what they are.
I know, I agree.
And when you hear this stuff, and they say, well, Venezuela is not an example of socialism. No, Venezuela is a perfect example of socialism.
Of course it is.
Because it started by they took over the oil companies. Then they took over the banks. And little by little, the Venezuelan government took over all of industry. Mm-hmm. And that's why Venezuela collapsed. Now, what democratic socialists claim is, well, we don't want to take over business. We're not trying to take over control of companies.
Yes, they are.
Of course they are. But they're trying to do it under a very, they're trying to do it in a hidden way.
Fly a different flag, but it's the same flag.
So instead of saying we want to take over the drug companies, they say we need to regulate the drug companies so they can't be profitable. Mm-hmm. Profit's not a dirty word. Profit is what makes the world work.
You know, if it weren't for the mainstream media, you'd have a chance at explaining this stuff and exposing it for what it really is. But the mainstream media constantly pushes back on the Democrat ticket. They are so in bed with the Democrats that they will push anything that they say and distort it, pervert it, which is why we all call it fake news now on our side. And they call it, disgusting on theirs, and how we're trying to get rid of journalists who don't exist anymore, which, you could probably count on one hand how many real journalists there are out there. It may be two hands, but they certainly are not dominant today. So the mainstream media carries their water, and that's where people get most of their information. And they're slowly but surely losing their power, which they're pushing back on, saying it's totally anti-American. But, individualism is so important. It's what the country was founded on, freedom of the individual and not the government. And every other government was founded on the other principles where government ruled. It's like a monarchy. It's just fascinating to me as I get older and look at this stuff and realize what I didn't know growing up and what I should know now. It's funny because when I talk to my kids they're not kids anymore, they're young men and young women. When I talk to them, they get it, which is really encouraging to me. And it's not because of me, because they've kind of come to it on their own. And we're talking about people that live in Los Angeles and in Palm Beach, Florida. They kind of get it. And New York. I'll never forget when you and I sat down with Courtney in New York, and she recently moved there, and we were talking about having dinner. We were talking about taxes and things like that, and you brought up something, I can't recall what it was about taxes, which was obvious to us and not to them. And then all of a sudden, she got her first tax bill from the state of New York. Mm-hmm. And she said, oh, my gosh. Of course, she didn't move from there because she's got this great job. But holy cow, it just waylaid her. She'd never seen anything like it. And she came from California. Blue Emu works fast and you won't stink. This episode of Blunt Force Truth is brought to you by Blue Emu Pain Relief Products. Now, I've been in show business for many years now, and I'm not slowing down, but I can use a little help every now and then. Blue Emu's family of products are made in America and have become a staple in my life. The deep penetrating formula of Blue Emu Original is best for supporting my muscles and joints, and I'm sure you've seen it. It's on the shelf in a blue and white jar. I also use Maximum Arthritis for any arthritic pain and the lidocaine cream for numbing pain relief. Not only do these Blue Emu formulas work great, there's no chill, no burn, and no odor. Blue Emu, it works fast and you won't stink. Available at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Amazon, and other fine retailers.
Well, here's something that's interesting. You were just talking about the press, and you know how there's been, the left right now has pretty much put an assault on the First Amendment right now.
I am not sure what they haven't assaulted at this point. I mean, they assaulted everything American.
Well, what they want to do right now is they want to stop conservatives from being able to speak.
It seems, it doesn't seem that way. It's happening through Google, through YouTube, through Twitter, through all of those social accounts. What are some others? There are others out there.
All of them. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google.
Instagram, that's what I was looking for.
All of these are hell-bent on controlling the narrative and controlling the conversation, as well as the media is complicit in this too.
And controlling who we vote for next time.
So they're really trying to get rid of the First Amendment. Now, this is not the first time this was attempted. It was attempted by Woodrow Wilson.
I'm not surprised.
Woodrow Wilson enacted something called the Sedition Act.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Now my memory comes back. Right.
Right. And what was the Sedition Act? The Sedition Act was you could be charged with a crime and given up to 10 years in prison if you spoke badly of the government.
Oh, let's go back just a little bit. Let me add a little context to that.
Mm-hmm.
What is the school of
Frankfurt?
Frankfurt School, yeah. The Frankfurt School in Germany were communist. They were out of favor during the Second World War, and they ran, to Columbia University because of Hitler. But they were communists. And they literally invented politically correct language. And the reason that they invented it, now this goes back to the 1800s. They invented it so that you could not speak against the government. That was political correctness in a nutshell. And so Woodrow Wilson just picked up on what the Frankfurt School was pushing and thought, well, this will work. This will work here. It worked there.
So what they tried to say, so here's why. So follow with me here. Here's the chain of events. You had the socialist movement. The communist socialist parties were actually getting popular in the country.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Along comes Wilson. Wilson decides these guys are his political enemies. Not because he was not aligned with them. It's because it wasn't my flavor. I was the Democrat. They were the socialist. Mm-hmm. As the Democrat, I need to kill their brand.
Right.
So he creates the Sedition Act, which now makes it illegal to speak badly about the government. Now, if you go back to the founding fathers, the entire country was designed around the idea of speaking bad about the government.
Truth to power, exactly. Exactly what journalism was designed for, speaking truth to power.
So the whole idea was,
and by the way,
talk about the government
back to before the Revolutionary War, and talk about pamphleteers who were speaking against the power of the government, which was Britain at the time. And if it wasn't for them, they were the Twitter of their time. They were, had printing presses. They were under the gun all the time by the Brits. They constantly wanted to kill them, get rid of them, because they were the ones who were spreading word about the revolution.
So Woodrow Wilson starts the Sedition Act. Mm-hmm. And he does this in an attempt to shut up anybody who disagrees with him. Mm-hmm. He then appoints this very, very new, just hired FBI agent by the name of J. Edgar Hoover. Mm-hmm. And he appoints J. Edgar to go collect dirt on all of his enemies. J. Edgar Hoover consequently creates a set of file cards.
Right,
3x5 file cards.
He had them on everybody. They were scared to death of J. Edgar Hoover.
With dirt on 6,000 Americans.
So think about the leverage up to John F. Kennedy that think about the leverage that J. Edgar Hoover had on everybody. Presidents, vice presidents, Congress, you name it. He had a file on everybody. He had dirt on everybody. And he would come into the office and say, you know what? You either do what I want you to do or this could get out. I mean, I don't know how, but it could get out.
And this was a guy who dressed up in women's lingerie.
Well,
and kept it secret.
Today, what's wrong with that today? You know, that's fine.
Well, yeah, today he would have walked into the office dressed
he would have been on a parade in San Francisco.
So now to make it even worse, what happens is after Wilson kills off the Socialist Communist Party, they change their name to the AFL, which is still alive today.
AFL-CIO.
Yes, the American Federation of Labor.
Which becomes the what's that big union now? SEIU. SEIU. So
Wilson now this is why politics.
Let me point something out. Let me point something out that may not be obvious, but is obvious, should be obvious to everyone. All of these labor movement parties, every one of them, not just labor movement parties, but labor what did you say? CIO, AFL,
CIO, yeah.
All of these things, they're all on the left, every one of them. There's not one that's on the right.
No. So Wilson then uses J. Edgar Hoover and the Sedition Act to beat down his competition.
He put him in jail, as I recall.
Yes.
He put him in prison.
Up to 10 years.
Yeah.
Then he goes to the socialist and the communist and works with them to change their name to become a trade union.
Mm-hmm.
Then he passes laws to give them new power,
mm-hmm.
but only passes laws to give them power as long as he could control it.
Under his authority, right.
And use J. Edgar Hoover to collect dirt on all of them.
Well, the interesting thing is that's the left today. That's what it's grown. It's grown back into that whole thing that was covered. And, when they called themselves progressives back in the teens and the 20s. And then the Americans just got fed up with the word progressive because they knew what it meant because of Woodrow Wilson, really. And so then they changed their names to liberal, which they completely distorted the word liberal and became liberals. And they always pick a name that's a false name. Progressive is false. They're regressive.
Well, sure. Look at the consumer protection. What is it? The Consumer Finance Protection Bureau.
Mm-hmm.
What could sound possibly bad about protecting consumers' finances?
Right. Exactly.
It's a shadow freaking government.
Yeah.
Inside Washington, D.C. that the president's been trying to gut.
Right.
And guess who was the person that was the lead of creating that terrible agency?
I have no idea.
Hiawatha.
Hiawatha? Who?
Yes, she was the senator. Warren.
Really?
Yes. She's the senator who led that bill to create literally a shadow government.
Well, if you really don't have perspective, and I know that most of our audience does, but if you don't have perspective on the Democrat Party, they are all about consolidation of power in the government, a bigger, broader government. And as Dennis Prager said, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. So we were founded on citizens' rights and citizen government and all that kind of thing. And it's gone by the wayside. I mean, we've given up all of our power as citizens to a government that wants to take all of our freedoms away. And I don't know whether people really understand or get the principle behind that. I'm sure that many do, but there are a lot that don't. What
we do need to know is that what we're seeing today with these people coming out and being their democratic socialists, mm-hmm. with what we're seeing with bureaucrats, what we're seeing with the deep state, what we're seeing with the attack on Donald Trump, this stuff isn't new. This stuff's been going on.
Well, here's the thing I got to give Donald Trump credit for. He has made a journalism, to use the term loosely, journalists come out of the closet for who they really are. He's made the Democrats come out of the closet for who they really are. socialist, progressive. Everybody talks. I'm so glad that people are picking up the word progressive. A lot of people wouldn't say it. Rush Limbaugh he said they're liberal, they're not progressive, but they are historically, and they are now. So all of these people are now out of the closet where the American people can look at them. If you look at the Democrat debate and really evaluate what they were talking about, all the free stuff that they kept saying they're talking about. I mean, everybody loves free stuff. Nobody wants to pay for it. And they present it as free and as the government controlled and all this kind of stuff, but taxpayers have to pay for it. And Bernie Sanders actually came up and said, yeah, I'll tax the middle class, but they'll love it because their health care won't cost them anything and all that. Of course, there won't be any health care. Talk to anybody in Canada, or Britain. They have socialized health care.
Oh, it's a train wreck.
Yeah.
So you wonder, let me see if I can tie this all together. And I'm going to take this back to something called the Bretton Woods Accord.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bretton Woods Accord.
Like Vermont or something?
New Hampshire, I think.
New Hampshire, yeah.
So here's what happened. Let me take us back there.
What year are you talking about?
1944.
So while the war was going on, the Second World War wasn't finished.
No, it was at the end of it. And what we had here is we had a group of countries, about 44 countries got together and decided what were we going to do to rebuild the planet, how were we going to rebuild countries, and how were we going to stop countries from going into economic collapse.
And they did this in the woods of New Hampshire.
Correct. Now, the two people who ran this mess, the two top dogs, was one guy by the name of White, okay? Mm-hmm. And the other guy was called John Maynard Keynes.
Oh, John Maynard Keynes. Oh, my goodness. Keynesian economics. Yeah, this is what Britain took on, and were warned by everybody. They were warned by Churchill. Everybody on the right said, don't do this, and they did it anyway. And they became a socialist country because of John Maynard Keynes.
Right. So in this hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, came this meeting. And the meeting had committees, and there were subcommittees, and there were subcommittees under the subcommittees. Mm-hmm. But the people at the top of the food chain really made all the decisions, and that was Keynes and White. Yeah. White was appointed by the president here, which would be FDR.
Makes sense.
And Keynes represented Britain.
By the way, FDR was just an extension of Woodrow Wilson. He was the same guy, just different look, different clothes.
Now, what came out of that Bretton Accord is the reason Donald Trump is running into the resistance he's running into. Because what came out of there, and I understand people are going to say that now I'm starting to sound like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat here, but this is not a conspiracy theory. I'm giving you history. What came out of there was the Bretton Woods Agreement, and the world ran on the Bretton Woods Agreement until 1971. So what the Bretton Woods Agreement was that wealthy countries, based on the size of their economy, would put money into a fund called the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, which still exists,
right,
and the World Bank. Mm-hmm. And these funds would be the lenders of last resort for countries that were falling apart. Mm-hmm. Now, the whole premise behind this...
By the way, these IMF, you never get your money back. It just goes out there and into some dictator's pocket.
What America agreed to do in 1944 was to become exactly what Donald Trump says, which is he keeps referring to he's tired of America being the world's piggy bank.
Right.
The Bretton Accord was our agreement to become the world's piggy bank because we were the biggest economy. So we put in the most money. Mm-hmm. And we did this based on Keynesian economic theory.
Okay, most people don't have a clue who Keynes is. They really don't know. And That may be a whole different show. I don't know. But just to put it in a nutshell, Keynes was a socialist who wanted everything to be run by the government, and England was totally in on that. They became a Keynesian government, basically. France became a Keynesian government. Germany became a Keynesian government, but Germany was, far more capable of making money than the rest of us were. Britain was capable, but it just went into this giant pot, and Europe has been a cauldron of this labor and what's the other party? The Labor and the Tories.
Yeah,
they've been going at each other forever over Keynesian economics. Really, that's what it's really all about, and Keynesian principles. John Keynes was a bad guy, and he's bad for. If you listen to all of these people in the New York Times, Washington Post, they are Keynesian economic people. They're the ones that are pushing back on Trump's success, or anybody on the right's success for our economic explosion and everything else. There's always something wrong with it. And the Keynesians are the ones that find something wrong with it. There's a person in Idaho that's not getting benefits from it, and that's who they pick up, one guy in an entire state, and they base, the problems on that one guy or that one family or whatever it is. They've always got an example of who it's not working for.
Yeah, Keynesian theory is that economies can be controlled by the levers of government. So this is why you have a Federal Reserve here in the United States,
right?
Which, by the way, was created on Jekyll Island back in 1913. All of this stuff happened in the same window, this Woodrow Wilson FDR window.
This is all deep state stuff, what we refer to as the deep state. It's all bureaucrats. It's all administrative state. It's all of those people. That's who has the real power here, unfortunately.
So when you look at what was happening here, the Keynesian idea, first off, Keynesian idea is that government can use its various levers of power to stop economies from crashing and to stop economies from becoming overheated.
Right.
And this is why we have a Federal Reserve, and they raise interest rates and they lower interest rates. Now, the other school of thought, as you know, is called Austrian economics. Austrian economics is what America was really built on, or what people might know as laissez-faire economics.
Yeah, this would be Milton Friedman and who's the
Hegel.
Yeah, but who's
Hayek?
The guy? Not Hegel.
Hayek.
Yeah, Hayek. The guy in California, the black guy who's so great is Stanford.
Thomas Sowell.
Thomas Sowell is another who's brilliant, by the way. And he's in his 90s. I didn't realize that. I'm so sorry that he's going to be gone sometime soon. He is a voice of reason and a
very much so.
Of unreason, huh?
Very much so. But really, this is why we are a Keynesian economics. So we ran on the Bretton Woods Agreement up to 1971. And the reason we ran on Bretton Woods was the United States at the time had 2/3 of all the gold in the world. Mm-hmm. Because we were holding the gold for other countries too, because it was like, hey, send it over to us because we're not in the middle of the war. We'll take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we had all the gold. So they made the U.S. dollar the world reserve.
Mm-hmm.
And U.S. dollars could be exchanged for gold at $35.
Yep.
Now, what happened after we got out of the Bretton Woods Agreement was the United States started printing money. So as we printed money, we had more and more money in circulation, but still the same amount of gold.
Yeah, but Nixon took us off that, didn't he?
That's when the Bretton Woods Agreement shifted.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1971, Nixon took us off the Bretton Woods Agreement, or as what we referred to as the gold standard. It was really the Bretton Woods Agreement, and took us off of that, saying that temporarily dollars would no longer be able to be exchanged for gold at the U.S. Treasury. That temporary move is still going.
Nixon said something in that speech that's very interesting that no one will remember, but he said it. And it's on tape someplace because it's archived. At the end of that discussion, he said something very interesting. It's contrary to what you said. He turned on the mic, and you can see me where I am with my. He'd made this thing. We're going off the international gold standard, and then he said, whispered almost, I guess we're all Keynesians now.
Right, because that fulfilled the Keynesian model, was to get off the gold standard.
Nobody knew what he meant by that.
because the Keynesian model called for fiat currency. And fiat currency, folks, means governments can print as much money as they want. And the only thing that backs it is the full faith and credit of the United States of America or any other country. Right. But it has no intrinsic value. Mm-hmm. So when you look at, I mean, think about it. When you look at a $1 bill, a $10 bill, and a $20 bill, the only reason the $20 bill is worth 20 times more than the $1 bill is because we believe it is. It's just faith.
I know.
It's the same piece of paper with the same amount of ink on it.
With a different number on it.
Right. So we just think it's worth $20 because we have the faith to believe it's worth $20. So let me give you a couple little history things I want to throw in here. White was the guy who was pulling all the levers in America, right?
Yep.
Now, White, it was discovered, was also a spy for the Soviet Union, who was feeding the Soviet Union all of the information about our treasury.
Really?
Okay.
I didn't know
yes. That. Now, when this was discovered, the then President Truman claimed that he fired White when he found this out. Okay. Mm-hmm. Truman even testified before Congress claiming that he didn't know that White was a double agent until the Soviet Union actually started releasing documents showing that he'd been an agent for over 6 years, and Truman knew it. Mm-hmm. So again, when we start talking about Russian collusion,
oh, listen, the Democrat Party goes so far back with Russia and sympathies with Russia. It's ridiculous. And it seems like today you and I are the only ones that really know this.
The Democratic Party has a history dating back to FDR.
Hey, listen, FDR had his first vice president was not Truman, by the way, folks. It was another guy. I can't remember his name right now, but he was a
member of the Socialist Party.
He was a communist. He ran under the Communist Party. For president. And of course, it went nowhere, but he was an absolute avowed communist, and he was vice president of our country. If FDR had been shot or assassinated, we would have had the first communist vice president, and no one really knows that, which defies anything to me.
The Roosevelt administration was populated by socialists.
You know, you wonder about the State Department, and basically Roosevelt had basically put a whole bunch of communists in the State Department in order to appease Stalin during the Second World War. And, you know, it's funny because he and Churchill had an interesting relationship, but his real relationship was with Stalin. He really, you know, gave, because Stalin was fighting Germany and we were too. And he was almost dismissive to Roosevelt, or Roosevelt was dismissive to Winston Churchill in a lot of ways. But yeah, he populated the State Department. That's why I think the State Department is so incredibly corrupt today. Those policies have lived on for 75 years, 70 years.
Well, the first thing I want people to understand is the Democrats have had a long-standing relationship of an underground relationship with the Soviet Union dating back to FDR.
When Ted Kennedy was running against Reagan, I don't think most people know this, he sent a senator from California over to talk to the KGB about how they could undermine Reagan. Ted Kennedy did this.
This is their history.
Yeah.
This is
Whatever
why
they blame you for, that's what they're doing. It always is that way. It never changes.
Hillary Clinton working with Russians to put together this dossier, which is nothing new.
Which, by the way, interesting, Mueller was trying to investigate, not Trump. He was supposed to investigate Russia's interference with our election, right?
Which he didn't do.
Which he did not do.
Which is why putting him in front of Congress is going to backfire on the Democrats.
Well, we'll see.
Because Republicans are going to be able to question him.
Yeah, 5 minutes apiece. How do you unlock that vault in 5 minutes?
I still think it'll raise a lot of questions.
Maybe.
But at any rate, back to what I'm saying, the president is fighting. What came out of Bretton Woods was the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Mm-hmm. And the purpose behind this, folks, was really to have a one world government. Now, when you look at what's going on in the Democratic Party right now.
Well, look what, you know what, I tell you what, look what's going on with the EU right now. And with that's a one world government right there.
Right. But we ask ourselves, we keep asking ourselves, we're trying to use rational thinking here, and we're asking ourselves, why do the Democrats just want open borders?
For the same reason the EU wants open borders. They're bringing in every Muslim they can possibly bring in, throwing them all over Europe, just completely wrecking one culture after another. And that's basically what the Democrats are trying to do here.
Now, why would the Democrats want to have open borders and flood our country with illegal aliens? That is because they subscribe to the George Soros open society model of thinking.
Guess who's joins George Soros now?
The Koch brothers.
The Koch brothers, exactly.
Because the Koch brothers are open border.
Mm-hmm. These are the ugly Koch brothers that the Democrats always talk
vilify.
About. Huh? Oh, they vilified him terribly because they were supporting Code Pink Republicans, not real conservatives.
But now there are evil people, so the Democrats will say they're okay now.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason you have this open border thing happening is because when you have a group of people, and these are the bureaucrats, the college professors, the elected Democrats, these are people with this open society mindset where they believe with all sincerity at the deepest level of their heart that you are an incompetent buffoon, that you are not capable of making decisions for your own best interest, that you are nothing more than some form of cattle that needs to be told what to do and when to do it and how to do it, and that they are the enlightened people and are the only people smart enough to make these decisions. Now, if you're of an elitist mindset, Chuck, where you believe that you and your little group are the only enlightened people, and I want to remind people that George Soros himself has said on video that he recognizes that he has a messianic mentality.
Well, think about what Hillary Clinton said about Democrat voters. She said they're stupid.
Right, her own voters.
Her own voters, she claimed they were stupid.
Right, the Republicans were deplorable. Hers were stupid.
Right. It's on tape, folks. I mean, I'm not making this up.
They hate you. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, they hate you. They're not out to help you. No, they're not trying to give you a better life. They're not trying to increase your wages. They think we're all idiots.
By the way, I just watched something over the weekend that was interesting to me and put history in perspective as to just kind of the nature of man. I watched a thing about Queen Elizabeth, the first Queen Elizabeth I, who was the Virgin Queen. It was Elizabeth, right? Yeah, Elizabeth, the Virgin Queen. She has a robe that she wore in a particular portrait. And on that robe, you see eyes and ears. They're all over the robe, eyes and ears, because she was the first queen who had a group who did nothing but try to find out what everybody in the world was doing against her. And they were a father and son who started this whole thing and became really the second most important power behind the queen. And you realize how many people were after her, how many people wanted to assassinate her, how many people wanted to ascribe to the throne. It's during the time when she died that King James, you may be familiar with him, the King James Bible. King James, who was the King of Scotland, became the first King of Scotland and Britain. And he succeeded her, Queen Elizabeth. And it's fascinating to watch. I found it on Prime. You might find it yourself. I can't remember what the name of it was. You'll have to look it up. but it was just kind of a fascinating walk through the CIA of their time and the FBI of their time and the work that they did and trying to preserve the throne of England. And during that time, I mean, England was in great turmoil because of Catholics, and that's another element that you have to look at, Catholics and Protestants. They were at each other's throats all the time. And the Catholics in Spain, the Pope and everything were constantly trying to kill her and get rid of her. And they had all kinds of conspiracies going on within the country. But one of the most interesting things to me was during the monarchy of that time, and perhaps it went on for a time until Parliament was brought about, and that is there was this, most everybody in the country were poor. Almost everybody was. And you had this elite class of the monarchy who were very rich and very powerful, and the people underneath them were very, very poor. And if you look at the Constitution that we have, the separation, I've mentioned this before, the separation on the left, monarchy falls under the left. It does not fall under the right. The only thing that falls under the right, which is extreme right, is anarchy. That's it. But the right is like right down the center, and everything else, dictators, monarchs, everything else, oligarchs, all fall on the left.
Well, where I'm going with this is simply this.
I didn't mean to interrupt you with that diatribe. Sorry.
No,
I'm trying to put things in historical perspective to a certain extent anyway, as I can and can't.
Here's why I think the President Trump is getting the hatred and the resistance he's getting, Chuck.
Oh, man. I mean,
it's not because, yes, the guy's a bit of a lunatic. And guess what? You need to be a lunatic to take on the entire freaking world, to think that you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder why Europe and all these people are so favorable to Democrats, because they're just like them.
Right.
They wouldn't like Trump. There's nothing about him they would like. He's a threat to them.
President Trump is now going against 100 years of globalism. Right. We have, out of Woodrow Wilson onto FDR, onto Bretton Woods, we have been marching toward a globalism mentality. Now, all of a sudden, this guy gets elected to the presidency, and he starts asking simple questions. Why are we the world's piggy bank? Why are we paying for Europe's defense? Why didn't we move the embassy like we've been promising for 25 years? So he starts doing what a rational person would think makes sense, which is putting his own country first.
You mentioned something about Jerusalem. Have you noticed that in the last 4 years, this incredible anti-Semitism is springing up everywhere?
Well, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for the anti-Semitism, and there's a reason why Israel is so close to Donald Trump. Because Israel, as a country, thinks as a nationalist country. So they're aligned.
For being Hitler-like. They do it all the time.
Correct. So the reason that the Trump administration and Netanyahu are so close is because they're both trying to put their country first.
I think it's amazing that the left would claim that Israel is like Hitler after what Hitler did to Jews. I mean, it defies any kind of understanding. Just defies it.
Think about how AOC so just insults the Jewish community when she starts using the phrase never again in regards to border security, in regards to people being in custody.
And she's forgiven by the Democrats and forgiven by the media.
When she claims that our country's running concentration camps. And now, and I'm going to jump over to a couple news items, now we see that she's down at the border claiming that we're making women in custody drink out of toilets. So we're making them drink toilet water.
Right.
So first thing people don't realize is, I don't know if you know this, Chuck, she refused to actually go into the facility.
I know. I heard.
She stood outside with picketers. She stood outside with protesters and never went inside. Second thing, but she testified to what she saw inside.
Well, you don't want to see it because if you see it, then you have to, admit what you've seen. So it's easier just to deny it and make up what you've seen, what you haven't seen.
Then she's claiming that we're making women drink out of toilets.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen a prison toilet sink?
Yeah, they're stainless steel.
Correct. So on the bottom of it is the closet, the toilet. On the very top of it is a sink. So it's all in one fixture.
Right.
So the water fountain, the sink is on the top, the toilet's on the bottom. She's claiming because the potable water, the drinking water, because it's on the top of the fixture, that means you're making them drink out of toilets.
Well, I could care less what she thinks and what she says. She's just a kook. She really is. She's just an absolute kook. I think that everybody in Brooklyn, in fact, I'll be very surprised if she actually wins re-election.
I don't think she can. Now, I'd ask a question. There's this new thing coming up saying that there was a private Facebook page used by 9,000 Border Patrol officers, where 9,000 Border Patrol officers have been posting pictures and memes and insults and attacking the very people that they're holding in custody. And Cortez is going on saying this is the mentality of hatred. This is the way that the Border Patrol operates. They're all racist. They're all haters. They're all these things. Heads of the Border Patrol are saying they're going to investigate. If any of their officers, acted like this, they'll take appropriate measures.
Right.
I have a question for you. You can't even post something on Facebook that says you don't like Ocasio-Cortez without losing your Facebook account.
Is that true?
Pretty much.
Well, I'm not on Facebook, so I don't know. I don't know what happens on
Facebook is censoring so badly.
I think your office has me on Facebook, right?
Correct.
I've
Yes.
never even checked it, never looked at it in all the years we've been together. But it's it's what, an extension of my Twitter. That's basically
your Twitter feed dumps into your Facebook feed.
Right. But other than that, I have never even seen my Facebook page.
So Facebook is so stringent now that if you post something negative about Hillary, negative about Ocasio, they shut your account down. Okay? But somehow 9,000 Border Patrol agents
were able to do that.
9,000 Border Patrol agents managed to share a single Facebook page with nothing but racial slurs and hatred, and Facebook didn't notice. Does this make sense?
No, it doesn't, naturally.
This makes no sense, does it?
Listen, when you listen to Democrats talk, nothing they say makes sense. And yet we're supposed to believe it, supposed to think that's the gospel. We're supposed to follow it. We're supposed to endorse it. And they make no sense. I mean, my God, you did watch the debates, didn't you? I mean, it was insane the things that they were saying.
My bet, I'm going to tell you right now, I will bet you that these 9,000 rogue agents posting on Facebook are nothing more than people on the left posting as agents, because you don't have to prove you're an agent to post.
They're bots.
You can just say I'm an agent. And Facebook is complicit in it, because otherwise Facebook would have taken the page down.
You would think. I mean,
absolutely would have.
By their standards.
They would have taken the page down. Facebook is in on this, and this is nothing more than the type of nonsense. I'll give you an example. The type of nonsense
this is the kind of thing they're going to use to try to win the election. They're going to have all kinds of false flags out there accusing people of everything that they didn't do. And maybe this is just the opening salvo.
It's going to find out that it's absolute nonsense. I'm absolutely
will be held responsible. No one
will be held responsible because it will be anonymous.
Yeah.
We can't trace it down.
By the way, during the Elizabethan era, you know who came up as one of the terrorists?
No, who?
Guy Fawkes.
Oh, there's a surprise.
That's where Guy Fawkes was born. Guy Fawkes was born, and anonymous, and all these people, are talking about being anonymous. That's the Guy Fawkes guy. That's another thing I found out. I didn't realize what part of history he claimed.
Of course, now they've done away with the Guy Fawkes mask, and they just put scarves over their face.
And call them Antifa.
Call them Antifa, and then go and beat a gay Asian guy to a pulp because he's conservative. So, by the way, being gay doesn't protect you if you're a conservative. Conservative is so hated.
Nothing protects you if you're a conservative. If you're a conservative woman, black, gay, doesn't matter. They hate you because of your ideology. They don't hate you because of your skin color or your sex or whatever. It's just Democrats are the most hateful group on earth that I'm aware of at this point. Well, maybe not on earth, but they certainly are in America.
They are the biggest risk to this nation.
I have to say that as far as I'm concerned, and this is my opinion only, they are the enemy within.
Yeah, they are the risk to this nation. And they control the bureaucrat.
Who are code pink Republicans are part of that cabal, as far as I'm concerned. I wonder, all of this stuff is coming to light now about what happened with the FBI, CIA, all the intelligence, people, Clapper and Brennan, and how they handle this Golden. If they expose all of this, I wonder what will be the outcome once they expose everything, and it's just so dirty that people can't even accept it. I have a feeling that nothing will change. Well, sadly.
Well, I want people to still feel energized.
Well, me too, and positive.
Socialism has raised its ugly head many times in the history of this country,
and we've defeated it.
And we have always defeated it
to a certain extent. It always has been part of our government since FDR, especially, and the Johnson administration. Every Democrat, every socialist thing that we have in our government that we would consider being socialist has always been introduced by a Democrat, never a Republican.
That's pretty much.
Well, it's FDR, Woodrow Wilson, Johnson, Carter. I mean, you name it. They're all, but by the way, Jimmy Carter's come back. He's actually rehabilitated himself in the Democrat Party. They ran for him forever. And now all of a sudden, Jimmy Carter is now the voice to be listened to.
Well, because he says Trump was not legitimately elected.
Well, he said Trump was guilty of collusion.
Yeah, because if you don't have any evidence, you just claim it.
That's right, because it was proved that he was not by a bunch of Democrats and a code pink Republican. So, even at that, that's why I say I don't think anything will change. Even no matter how they prove that this was a absolute cabal against Trump that was illegitimate, illegal in many ways, I don't have the confidence that people will pay a price.
But collusion is real. There was collusion.
Oh, yeah. Hillary Clinton colluded. The whole Democrat Party colluded.
And the Obama administration.
And they will deny it, and yet there's proof that they did it. And it's amazing to me.
Well, we need to continue to keep supporting this president. And,
absolutely.
And as I said earlier, is he a bit of a lunatic? Yes. Does he say some crazy stuff? Yes. Is he getting things done? Yes.
Absolutely.
Is he going head first into 100 years of globalism? Yes.
And on top of that, I tweeted this out, and I know it's very simplistic, but Trump is a pretty smart cookie.
Yeah, he's not an idiot.
No.
A little crazy, but he's not an idiot.
That's all the time we have for today. We've covered a lot of stuff, and I hope you kept up with this, and I hope that you'll indulge yourself and find out more about some of the things we talked about today. It's been a great show. I've really enjoyed it, Mark. Thank you so much. And we hope that you've enjoyed Blunt Force Truth as well. I'm Chuck Woolery, along with Mark Young, and we'll see you next time.